Good evening and welcome to the Sleeping Zoo. Facts to fall asleep to. The stick insect, found in the Phasmatodea order, often simply called a walking stick, is a living lesson in camouflage and deceptive simplicity. Across the tropical and temperate zones of the world, these invertebrates have perfected the art of blending in, evolving bodies that mimic the stems, twigs, and leaves of their environment with astonishing fidelity. They represent one of the most compelling examples of crypsis in the entire animal kingdom, sacrificing speed and aggressive defense for the passive, yet almost flawless protection of invisibility. This commitment to disguise dictates every aspect of their lives, from their movement to their diet. To begin to understand this master of masquerade, we must first look at the specialized biological structures that allow a creature to convincingly become a plant, examining the unique features of its physiology. The core of the stick insect's success lies in its remarkably attenuated, or elongated, exoskeleton. This hard outer shell, made of chitin, is generally cylindrical and highly specialized to resemble the texture, color, and even minor imperfections of plant material. The body is typically divided into the three main segments of head, thorax, and abdomen, but the thoracic segment, where the legs are attached, is often significantly extended, mimicking the long, straight line of a stem. The legs themselves are thread-thin, held rigid and parallel to the body, often featuring specialized nodes, bumps, or ridges, sometimes called tubercles, that convincingly replicate leaf scars or the rough texture of bark. This intricate external design is constantly adapted through molting, with the insect changing its color and texture to match the dominant foliage of its current habitat. Some species even display remarkable ability to change color slowly over a period of days or weeks, responding to changes in light, temperature, and background color, an adaptation that significantly enhances their camouflage effectiveness. Internally, the stick insect exhibits physiological traits adapted to a life of low energy expenditure. As insects, they breathe through a system of small external openings along the abdomen, called tracheae and spiracles, which limits their size but perfectly suits their largely sedentary lifestyle. Their metabolism is notoriously slow. They spend long periods of time completely motionless, relying on their disguise. This low metabolic rate is also necessary to support the phenomenon of autotomy, or self-amputation, a critical defense mechanism. When a predator grabs a stick insect's leg, the insect can voluntarily detach the limb at a specific point. This loss is not permanent. Many species, particularly nymphs, have the extraordinary physiological ability to regenerate the lost limb over a series of subsequent molts, often producing a smaller functional replacement. The energy reserves needed to support this regeneration are a key factor in their feeding and resting habits. A less obvious, but equally important, physiological adaptation relates to their reproductive capacity. Many species of stick insects, particularly the larger tropical ones, exhibit a phenomenon known as parthenogenesis, which is the ability to reproduce asexually without mating. In these species, populations may be entirely female, with each individual capable of producing viable eggs that are genetically identical clones of the mother. This is a massive evolutionary advantage in a creature that struggles to move large distances and is often scarce. If a single female reaches a new, suitable habitat, she can rapidly colonize the area without needing to locate a male, drastically increasing the chances of species survival and dispersal. This remarkable physiological capacity for self-replication dictates a behavior that is primarily driven by inertia and the precise execution of their camouflage strategy. The behavior of the stick insect is an exercise in extreme, calculated stillness, making movement the greatest risk and therefore the rarest occurrence. Their entire existence is a demonstration of the power of remaining perfectly immobile to avoid detection, a strategy called akinesis. The central behavioral adaptation is the swaying action. When they must move, or when they are disturbed by a slight breeze, stick insects employ a slow, rhythmic, side-to-side oscillation of their bodies. This movement is not random. It is a highly evolved mimicry of a twig gently moving in the wind. This wind mimicry breaks up the insect's outline and reinforces the illusion of being inanimate plant material, fooling the visual systems of both predators and potential prey. The effectiveness of this motion means that when a stick insect walks, it does so in a series of extremely slow, jerky steps, interspersed with long periods of intentional swaying, ensuring that any movement is interpreted as an environmental disturbance, rather than the movement of a living creature. Their feeding behavior is similarly precise and risk-averse. Stick insects are herbivorous, feeding primarily on the leaves of their host plants. Because they are designed for camouflage on their host, they rarely venture off the plant, often staying on the same bush or tree for their entire life. They feed mostly at night, when the risk of visual predation from birds is minimized. The feeding process itself is slow and deliberate, consuming the leaf tissue piece by piece. The long, slender forelegs are used not for locomotion, but as sensory probes to identify and secure the leaf edges, while the mandibles clip away small sections of the foliage, a low-profile feeding method that minimizes the disruption of the plant cover. Another crucial behavioral defense is the death-feigning response. If their camouflage fails, and they are physically disturbed or grabbed, many species will drop to the ground and curl their legs into tight, seemingly unnatural positions, remaining completely rigid and motionless. This mimics a dead, dried-out twig that has fallen from the plant. Many predators, such as birds, are often deterred from eating dead or decaying matter, and the stillness combined with the lack of reaction often gives the stick insect the precious moments needed for the predator to lose interest and for the insect to make its slow, camouflaged escape. Furthermore, some species have evolved secondary deterrent behaviors to be deployed after the camouflage fails. These insects are often brightly colored beneath their cryptic forewings, colors that are usually hidden but are dramatically flashed when threatened. Species like the Peruvian fern stick insect Oreophotes peruana are boldly colored with red and black stripes, and when stressed, are known to emit a noxious spray of fluid from glands on their thorax. This chemical defense is a final, highly unpleasant warning to a curious predator, demonstrating that their entire behavioral repertoire is a spectrum of strategies, ranging from the ultimate passivity of stillness to the active deployment of chemical weaponry. The habitat of the stick insect is globally extensive, yet locally specific, defined by the narrow ecological niche of the host plant. The Phasmatodea order thrives predominantly in tropical and subtropical regions, with high species diversity in Southeast Asia, Australia, and Central and South America. Although a few species, such as the European stick insect Bacillus roscius, have established themselves in temperate parts of Europe. The requirement for a suitable habitat is simple but absolute: a constant, reliable source of specific food foliage that provides both nutrition and perfect camouflage. The best habitats are characterized by dense, stable vegetation that offers numerous hiding places and minimal disturbance. Tropical rainforests are the primary biodiversity hotspots for stick insects, offering a year-round supply of large, layered leaves and dense, textured bark, leading to the evolution of the largest and most dramatically camouflaged species, some of which mimic moss or lichen, loss or lichen. In arid scrublands and eucalypt forests, species have evolved to mimic the hard gray-green leaves and rough bark of eucalyptus trees. The famous spiny leaf insect is a prime example, mimicking dead, curled-up eucalyptus leaves. In temperate shrubbery found in cooler zones, stick insects rely on easily identifiable, broad-leafed plants like brambles, roses, and oaks, often only surviving where the climate is warm enough for their eggs to survive the winter. The stick insect's life cycle is intrinsically linked to its host plant. Females drop their eggs, which often resemble seeds or droppings, directly onto the ground beneath the host. The eggs typically have a hard shell and a specialized structure called a capitulum, which is an oily plug. In some species, this plug attracts ants, which carry the egg back to their nest, consume the oily plug, and discard the rest of the egg in a protected refuse pile, a form of seed dispersal by ants known as myrmecochory that ensures the safety of the developing embryo. When the nymph hatches, its sole mission is to find the nearest food source, which is usually the plant above it. If the habitat is fragmented or the host plant is removed, the nymphs face almost certain death, as they lack the mobility or energy reserves to traverse large, open, hostile areas to find a new feeding site, a dependency that defines their fragile ecology. The ecology of the stick insect, though often overlooked due to its success at remaining unseen, centers on its role as a primary consumer and a key element in the detrital food web. As herbivores, they play a vital, if small, part in controlling the growth of specific host plants. Their primary ecological function is as a link species in the food chain, transferring energy from the plant material they consume to the predators that manage to breach their exceptional camouflage. Despite their best efforts, stick insects are a significant food source for two main groups of predators: spiders, particularly large orb weavers and tarantulas, often find stick insects because arachnids rely less on sight and more on vibration and touch to detect prey. Bats, which use echolocation to detect the insect's movement. And birds, especially those with sharp eyesight and a strong visual search pattern, are the primary aerial threats during daylight hours. However, the most fascinating ecological role relates to their unique eggs. As mentioned, the ant dispersal mechanism of the eggs means that the stick insect, through its egg morphology, actually engages in a beneficial relationship with ants, using the ant colony's security to ensure the survival of its next generation. Furthermore, the discarded egg casings contribute to the forest floor detritus, supporting the nutrient cycle, albeit on a small scale. The most profound ecological interaction, however, is the concept of evolution with its host plants. Stick insects have not only evolved to look like their host plants, but often possess specialized enzymes in their digestive systems to cope with the specific defensive toxins produced by their host foliage. This intimate long-term relationship means that some species of stick insects are monophagous, feeding on only one type of plant. If that plant is removed or its health declines, the corresponding stick insect population will collapse, demonstrating the tight, fragile ecological bond that makes them vulnerable to conservation threats. Their slow movement, small population densities in some regions, and their high degree of specialization mean that unlike generalized pests, stick insects are highly sensitive to habitat changes and struggle to adapt to rapid environmental shifts. The conservation status of most stick insect species is generally unknown due to their cryptic nature, making population monitoring incredibly difficult. However, many island-dwelling or highly specialized species are listed as vulnerable or critically endangered, reflecting their extreme sensitivity to habitat loss. The situation for the stick insect is less about widespread poaching and more about the specific fragility of its habitat. The primary threat to stick insects is the destruction of their host plants. Since many species are monophagous and rely entirely on one or two plant species, clear-cutting a forest or changing agricultural practices can instantly render an area uninhabitable. For example, the Lord Howe Island stick insect, often called a land lobster, was once believed to be extinct for 80 years after rats were introduced to its native island. It was later rediscovered on a tiny, isolated sea stack. Its survival was linked to a single endemic shrub, Melaleuca howawana, highlighting the disastrous consequence of habitat disturbance and the introduction of invasive species. Another major threat is collection for the exotic pet trade. While the practice itself is not on the scale of threats to tigers or rhinos, the collection of rare, brightly colored, or unusually shaped species for hobbyists can decimate small, isolated populations, particularly those on islands. Because many species are slow to reproduce naturally, reproducing only biennially or triennially, and have specialized environmental needs, populations cannot easily withstand constant removal pressure. The third threat is climate change and extreme weather events. Due to their reliance on specific temperature and humidity levels for egg incubation and their slow metabolism, extreme fluctuations in temperature or prolonged droughts can dramatically reduce the survival rate of eggs and nymphs, particularly in sensitive mountain and coastal zones. Conservation efforts for the stick insect primarily focus on captive breeding programs and habitat restoration. Due to the ease with which many species reproduce through parthenogenesis and their simple dietary needs, they are excellent candidates for ex situ breeding, a strategy that has successfully saved the Lord Howe Island stick insect from extinction. Furthermore, conservationists are working to preserve and restore the native host plants in critical areas. Public outreach often relies on leveraging the insect's inherent fascination to raise awareness. Their bizarre appearance makes them ideal ambassadors for invertebrate conservation. The stick insect's mastery of invisibility and its unusual twig-like shape have earned it a space in popular culture, folklore, and legend that is often more about mystery and curiosity than power or fear. Unlike the dramatic figures of the tiger or the rattlesnake, the stick insect is a quiet, often overlooked muse. In various Southeast Asian cultures, the stick insect is frequently regarded with a kind of gentle reverence. Due to its uncanny ability to mimic its surroundings, it is often seen as a symbol of patience, adaptation, and camouflage. A lesson in how to survive through subtlety and quiet maneuvering. In some traditions, finding a stick insect is considered a sign of good luck or an indication that one should remain still and observe the environment closely before taking action. Its presence often signifies the deeper, hidden magic of the forest, where things are not always as they seem, reflecting a respect for the hidden world of nature. In Western popular culture, the stick insect is mainly appreciated as a scientific curiosity and a low-maintenance exotic pet. Its popularity in education, and as a harmless first pet, has made it an accessible point of contact with the insect world for millions of children, fostering early interest in entomology and natural history. The insect's shape and slow movement have made it a recurring motif in animation and children's media, often portrayed as a gentle or eccentric character. Its most recent and notable appearance is in the character Loom from the animated film A Bug's Life, where it is characterized by its long, awkward limbs and its inherent, but often inconvenient, camouflage. This cultural representation reinforces the stick insect's role as a benign symbol of nature's strange, beautiful ingenuity. The enduring cultural fascination with the stick insect stems entirely from its physiology, the sheer, bizarre spectacle of its camouflage. Its presence in our consciousness serves as a constant, quiet reminder that the most successful strategy in life is sometimes not aggressive confrontation, but simply blending in perfectly still and letting the world pass by, a principle that is both a profound behavioral adaptation and a gentle theme in its folklore. Its survival, now dependent on conservation efforts that protect its narrow habitat and host plants, is a testament to the fact that even the most inconspicuous creatures are vital, indispensable elements of the global ecology. In conclusion, the stick insect is an evolutionary marvel of crypsis, relying on an elongated chitin exoskeleton and the capacity for autotomy and regeneration to sustain its low-energy life. Its behavior is fundamentally driven by akinesis and the specialized swaying action to maintain the illusion of plant life, an energy-saving strategy necessary for its herbivorous nocturnal feeding habits and its ability to reproduce asexually through parthenogenesis. The insect's survival is strictly tied to a narrow, species-specific habitat defined by the host plant, a dependency that makes it a highly sensitive, specialized primary consumer and a unique ecological partner, particularly through the ant-mediated dispersal of its seed-mimicking eggs. This extreme specialization makes many species acutely vulnerable to habitat destruction and invasive species, driving intensive conservation efforts focused on captive breeding to save its most threatened population. Despite its quiet life, the stick insect's striking disguise has earned it a revered place in folklore as a symbol of patience and adaptation, ensuring that this quiet master of camouflage remains a beloved curiosity in the eyes of the world. Thank you and good night.